Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a meeting of Cabinet on 15th of October. We'll go to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. Mr. Evans?
No apologies.
Okay, thank you. We'll move then to disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests. If you have any interest, please can you indicate? I'll go to Councillor Rayner first.
Thank you, Chair. Let me find it. Item 11, local authority governor appointments. I have a personal and prejudicial interest, so we'll be leaving the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. And to help with that, we'll take item 11 earlier in the agenda. Sorry, at the end of the agenda, apologies. We'll move then. Any further disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest? No, can't see any indications. Okay, we'll move then to the minutes, please, of the last meeting, pages 1 to 5. For accuracy first, page 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Happy to move.
Somebody move those. Thank you. Councillor Lewis, any seconder, please?
Happy to second.
Thank you. All in favour?
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are agreed. Announcements of Leader of the Council. I have no formal announcements today. We'll move on to public question time then. Mr. Evans, have we received any questions?
No questions received.
Okay. Go to councillor question time. Are there any councillors who wish to answer a question today?
Yes, Leader. I would, if that's possible, to ask a question, and thank you for allowing me to come in.
No problem. Councillor Holly?
Right. It concerns the report on the recovery and transformation on which is agenda item 15. Obviously, having read the report and having had a briefing from Adam and yourselves, look forward to some of the issues within it going and having greater detail about what's in it. But the one thing I would ask is, in the narrative, there is no mention of the scrutiny of the report. Yes, there is a little box in one of the diagrams showing a scrutiny, but I was wondering if you would be good enough to put into that report a narrative, a paragraph in the narrative saying that all of this is subject to ongoing scrutiny as it's a live document.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Holly. As we discussed, and I'm very happy to add that short paragraph in, because it is council policy anyway. And as you know, whilst we as an executive cannot influence what scrutiny wishes to look at, it's quite within scrutiny's rights to look at this as part of the process. So yes, when we come to the report, I'm happy to include that amendment into the narrative.
Thank you very much. That's
okay.
all.
Thank you, Councillor Holly. Any other questions from councillors? If not, then we'll move to the first full item, which is the annual review of performance 2019, pages 6 to 107. And I go to Councillor Andrew Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to be bringing this report here today. Even though this is looking back on the previous year, it shows what we have done in line with our corporate priorities and corporate plan. I think it makes for exciting reading and shows just how much we have achieved. It shows that not only we are meeting our wellbeing objectives, but what we are doing to excel in them. This year, we're looking at more and more case studies to illustrate what we have achieved over the past year. And there are some very encouraging reports right across the board, in particular with safeguarding and making it everybody's business within the city. I'm very encouraged to see that we are moving on our wellbeing objectives, and the report highlights several extremely promising city deal initiatives and what they can do for our city. The bulk of the report comprises almost 100 pages set out from page 9, so I won't go into depth on each area. I'm sure colleagues will want to come in on the respective portfolio areas. There are some exciting schemes around transformation of future council, with the most notable being the £1 million community fund to boost community-inspired initiatives across the county. The fund was put in place for local priorities within our communities, capital schemes like road projects, play areas, enhanced lighting and other exciting projects, and I'm pleased to see that work's begun on the first of these schemes. Almost 50% of the schemes that came forward in the first round were for play, and complement the extra £1 million ring fence for play upgrades that was agreed at our last meeting, potentially putting over 1.5 million investment into our play facilities across the county. Proof that this administration is investing in community priorities. A further £720,000 per year is already available to councillors to improve their areas, whether it's small-scale highway improvements, floral displays, tree planting, or providing life-saving defibrillators to the local area. Thanks to these funds, it'll be possible to invest in what local people want to see because it will make a difference in their local area. Another exciting initiative is Crowdfund Swansea. Launched in October last year, we were the first council in Wales to team up with Spacehive, a dedicated fundraising platform for our communities. Crowdfunding is a creative and collaborative way to bring local ideas to life, a way for people, businesses and charities to raise money for local projects. It's an ideal platform for smaller scale projects, especially those that think outside the box. We set aside £75,000 to support the very best of these projects, and we've seen a wide variety already obtain funding through the platform. One recent project being Swansea Bay beach clean stations that have gone down exceptionally well in the locality. It would be remiss of me not to thank our officers that have done exceptionally well. It would be remiss of me not to thank our officers that have done excellent work in pulling together a report of this standing. And thank you to Richard Rowlands for collating the info and laying out in an easy to digest way. There are so many positive stories within the appendix. If I were to go through them all, we would be here well into the afternoon. If anyone wants to come in on their areas, then please feel free. Happy to move the report. Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens. Does anybody wish to add to what Councillor Stevens has said for their specific area? Can I remind you, I can't see all hands, so if you do want to come in, if you shout out your voice, your name, sorry. Okay, I got Councillor Francis Davis and Councillor Rayner and Councillor King. So I'll go to Councillor Francis Davis first.
Yeah, it's a scheme, I think, for play areas. And I'd like to thank you, Leader, for suggesting this money come forward. I've been working quite closely with Councillor Stevens on this. And it has been so well received by over the 30-odd wards within Swansea that during this unprecedented time of COVID-19, people have come to appreciate their parks far more than ever. And it is important that we signed up to the UNESCO Rights to the Child, and one important part of the rights of the child is the child's right to play. And with this money now, we will be able to invest in all areas of the city and county of Swansea, play equipment that people can take advantage of. It is much needed money, and it's been prioritised by many councillors already in investing the other community sum that we made available, capital schemes. So I think it's an exciting time to see every community within Swansea have an offer for our young people to participate in, with health and well-being so important. It's good to get children out of the homes and actually running around in playgrounds and getting fitter. So we've all seen the problems. I think we've all got oblong eyes lately because the amount of times we looking at screens day in, day out, and I'm sure our children are doing the same. So this investment in play is going to be very rewarding and much healthier than in sitting in front of a screen, as we all know only too well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Francis Davis. Go to Councillor Rayner next.
Thank you. Yes, I think this is a really positive report. What shines through is the close working relationships across all portfolios between cabinet members and senior officers. I think although it's divided up into sections and allocated, as you read each section, you can see clear links with other areas of the council. And I think this is a really important development, and everyone has to be congratulated on this open and transparent way of working. On the schools issue, I'm really pleased with where we are. Estyn and the Welsh Government both recognise that Swansea schools are very strong. Internally, we have put in additional support and training, and we have robust measurement in our schools. We are moving to a different form of PIs looking forward. And although this report mentions GCSEs and A-levels, what I think we have to start recognising is that over 50% of our pupils now take vocational courses in addition to and alongside those national exams. These are nationally recognised vocational courses, which certainly improves their chances of getting jobs and their employability skills. The other area I'm very proud of is the partnership working. On page 22, there is reference to the development of My Choice, which is a digital programme designed and developed by our own officers, and I have to mention Dave Bowden in particular, which lists for all Swansea schools offering post-16 education, all the colleges, Gower College, Neathport Talbot College and Coleg Sir Gar, and recently Bridgend College, which offers animal welfare courses for which Swansea pupils go to, have asked to come on board. This has been developed with Careers Wales, and it is a fantastic opportunity for pupils and parents to actually see what is on offer across Swansea and make informed choices and apply online and get extra information instead of having to wait for each organisation to have an open day and then sort of go and play speed dating at those locations. So I'm very proud of a lot of the development work that's going on, but even more proud of the fact that we are effectively working across portfolios. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rayner. I'll now go to Councillor King.
Thank you, Leader. I just really wanted to spotlight the work around the voice and rights of young people within the authority, because I think this is a real success for us in how the UNCRC is embedded within the authority, and highlighting the work of our participation team, who do a fantastic job of engaging young people, but also our care experienced young people who have a real input into the shaping of our services and the services that deliver to them. And I think that's really shone through in the report, particularly about how we have developed our corporate parenting strategy. And of course, there's a very recent example of how young people have been involved in the recruitment of our new head of child and family services, which I think has been a really positive step forward. So I'm really pleased that this work has been spotlighted within the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor King. On to Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Very quickly, Councillor Stevens mentioned that this is a looking back report, and that's quite right. But it does, and it'd be wrong that it didn't mention COVID and the response to the council. I think you know, reports are great, aren't they? But it's feedback and feedback from the community and the people that the council are being able to help during the coronavirus crisis that really makes a difference, and that's why the case studies are really important. But in terms of the speed of response to assist communities and particularly those on the shielding and vulnerable lists during the first lockdown, I think it'd be remiss not to mention that, and the huge effort and response that was put in through the council, through the third sector, SCVS and other voluntary organisations in supporting people and making sure that they got through the first wave of the coronavirus crisis. I think our local area coordinators played a huge part in that, and we expanded very quickly with that to make sure that that network of local community assistance and signposting was put in place at a very early stage, and hopefully we can see a return to that full coverage at some point in the near future. Of course, assisting local communities is great, but there's also a huge role that everyone has played in terms of safeguarding. We all know that lockdown didn't have a positive effect for many sections of our community, which has seen negative effects of lockdown in terms of abuse, domestic violence, and all those sorts of safeguarding issues, which our community response could be the ears and eyes of those people that needed help and assistance. So they played a vital role, not only in assisting communities on a day-to-day basis with their shopping, medicines, etc., but that vital role that we all have to play in terms of ensuring our people, the residents of Swansea, are shielded and safeguarded from those horrible parts of society. So I look forward to seeing next year's report, where we'll probably expand on that a bit more. But community response, community feedback, which is hugely positive, and that role that everyone has to play in safeguarding, making it everyone's business, is one huge positive that we can all take away from it.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. I'll go to Councillor Pugh.
Oh, only quick, really. I don't know if you can see me because my end is black. I can't. My camera doesn't seem to be working, so I don't know what's going on here. Sorry. Just really in regards to poverty, it's a well-written report, excellent report, and it's lovely to see, as everybody's already said, the excellent partnership work that takes place both internally and externally, because poverty is so vast, we couldn't do it without partners, you know, and that's right across the board here. And, you know, and I'm really proud of our internal poverty forum, where all departments have really, well, gone above and beyond, you know, to say and make lives better for the residents of Swansea. And even if you take the welfare rights team with a 94% success rate on appeal, which is huge and life-changing to people, you know, you're talking absolutely fantastic results here. You know, the employability team, I could go on. I just want to say the report is retrospective. It looks back. COVID has caused even more difficulties for people, and you know, the officers have really honestly risen to the challenge. So I just wanted to say, show my thanks really, and say what a good job everybody's been doing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pugh. And yes, we could see you. That's fine. Is there anybody else? I think I've seen all the hands, but if there is anybody else, if you could let me know. Okay.
Yeah, Councillor Thomas, leader.
Thomas.
Yeah, as Councillor Stevens says, a very positive report and quite an extensive report, and I could spend probably an hour going through areas affected by my portfolio. But one particular item I did want to emphasise and speak about was our active travel grant applications. I mean, it's on page 46, but in particular, it talks of us having over the last 3 years secured £12.7 million in funding from Welsh Government. You know, that's more than any other authority in Wales. And I think it very often goes under the radar. We've secured more grant funding than any other authority in Wales. And people should sit up and take note of that. Now, that doesn't come about by sitting idly on our hands. It's obviously a commitment of the authority, but equally and importantly, it's the work and dedication of the officers, small teams of people putting together these bids that are actually being agreed with and accepted by Welsh Government as well. But the net outcome of that is, and I'm just looking at the page there to quote a few figures, is the benefit for residents of Swansea and visitors is our network has increased by 33% over this period, and now 60% of households live within 500 metres of an off-road cycle track. That's quite a phenomenal shift. And it does afford the opportunity for people to enjoy cycling and walking off-road, which is something that's vitally important and has seen hugely beneficial throughout this COVID period. None of us saw this coming, but what a fantastic asset those extra resources we've been able to build. And I wanted to end on really as well, just a reminder for everybody about, you know, it's one thing securing the grant funding, and as you'll see later in the Cabinet report today, they're all in-year funding applications. So it's one thing securing the funding. By the time we get the agreement and the allocation is committed to by Welsh Government, and then it goes through our normal internal procedures like today at Cabinet and getting approved, we are really fighting against the clock to get these schemes built and in place by the end of the financial year. It's a huge challenge, but to date, in fairness to officers, we do use contractors as well to actually do some of the implementation of it, but to officers to get this organised and completed by year end, financial year end, I have to take my hats off to all of them, and it's a fantastic effort by everybody, and I think it's something that we all need to be proud of, not only as an authority for the way and our commitment to off-road cycling and pedestrian routes, but our officers and staff who are enablers to make this happen. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Is there anybody else who wishes to comment before I sum up?
Yeah.
And then...
Yes, please, Leader, if I can comment very briefly. It's mentioned under the section of Voice and Rights of the Child on page 17 about our continued development in tackling youth homelessness. And as I know Cabinet will relate to, we are all corporate parents and we all have that responsibility to our young care leavers to ensure that they can sustain a tenancy and live long, happy, healthy lives in housing. And I just want to pay tribute really to the organisations that help support us with this, and also just to highlight that over the past 12 to 18 months, we've been having training homes to enable them to get used to budgeting, get used to paying their rent and keeping a roof over their heads. And it's been working extremely well. And I'm really grateful to all the officers and the external agencies and partners who are involved. So thank you for the opportunity to highlight the great work that's going on, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lewis. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you all very much for your contributions, and for Councillor Stevens for bringing the report. I absolutely have to agree. I think Councillor Thomas touched upon it. You know, the amount of work that has been undertaken by not just our senior officers, but our lead officers, our staff who have been fantastic in continuing to deliver in exceptionally difficult times, and of course our partners. I think, you know, to get a report like this in an ordinary year would be an achievement, but to continue to deliver a report of this nature with delivery and dedication, you know, shining through from all involved is really exceptional, given the challenges that COVID has placed on the council and its many services. So I think you know, my thanks go to everybody involved in that, to all of you, and to everybody who's contributed to those achievements. Councillor Stevens, I'll come back to you for formal moving of the report.
Yep, thank you, Leader. Nothing more to add. I'm happy to move the report.
Okay, thank you. Could I get a seconder, please?
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. So, all in favour? Okay, thank you. That looks thing. Anybody against? No. Okay, thank you. That is carried. Thank you all very much. We'll now go to the next item, which is the Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring First Quarter Report. And I'll go to Mr. Smith for contribution first on this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. A slightly unusual first quarter report, not that unsurprising given the unusual year we've had. It does try to take a blended approach, which sets out at a strategic level our normal business in terms of reporting on directors' spending, but also trying to give an overall position of where I think we are likely to be at that macro level. And it's probably that bit which is the more important part at this stage. It's the assurance overall that, as far as I can foresee for the rest of the year in every scenario, we have sufficient funds to be able to confirm a balanced budget, the legal duty upon you. And speaking candidly and frankly, that's about as good as it gets in these unusual and uncertain times. In terms of the report itself, just very briefly walking you through it, Section 2.3 sets out a very substantial £31 million reported overspend by directorates. I do emphasise that is before we have had any money back from Welsh Government and before I've allocated any money to directorates. Section 2.7 sets out that we've already received about £12 million back from the pots that we have to competitively bid for to Welsh Government with all other local authorities. In addition to this, we have a number of specific grants which we have had ourselves directly, the most significant of which is the £86 million worth of business grants related activity. I'm absolutely confident we will get substantially more because there are a number of tranches of pots of competitive bid money to go for. Section 2.9 sets out some central tins and pots I've been able to wrestle and find about £2 million to put into the mix to reduce the service reported overspend. Section 3.2 sets out my recommendations and advice to you in terms of using the contingency, not only the in-year contingency, but the very substantial brought forward contingency sum as a result of the very significant underspend declared at outturn, and notwithstanding a number of interventions that Cabinet has already undertaken to provide significant support to partners. There are many millions of pounds already set out there where you have already made decisions. There is still £7 million available. I'm recommending to you that you apply to help balance the budget. Section 4.1 puts all of that in the mix and says, notwithstanding all of that, at this stage, I still feel it is necessary to make an assumption and to be prudent around assuming that up to £10 million of earmarked reserves may need to be made available to fully balance the budget. I see this as very much my setting out advice to you as reserve powers for sums that may be needed depending on how successful we are with recovering monies from Welsh Government and how the pandemic pans out in the second half of the year. Section 5 sets out the capital spending, and it's important that I emphasise that notwithstanding the disruption that there has been to the capital programme and notwithstanding the disruption we've had to normal activities, that is a world record sized capital programme for this authority and a world record sized first quarter spend. I think it's important that that is noted, that Swansea has remained open for business and carried on spending very, very substantial sums of money. Section 6 is its usual commentary on the HRA. It's normally fairly tidy, nothing much to report, and that remains the case at the moment, but equally indicates that in the second half of the year, as the economy is likely to be under substantial pressure, it may place people in further difficulty in terms of their ability to meet their rent obligations, and officers and members continue to monitor it closely. Taken as a whole, the whole report is summarised on page 118, and as I say, indicates that it is very much a balanced budget for the year, with some potential need to take those actions in year. And it does very, very eloquently summarise the very substantial swings that COVID has forced upon the authority in terms of the flexing of the budgets by well over £100 million. Before I hand over to you, Leader, I'm sure you'll wish to make some comments. In terms of the recommendations before you, in terms of my officer advice, you have 4 of them. Recommendations 1 and 4 are quite normal for this time of year in terms of the advice I give. Number 2 is needed because the environments are so substantial as a result of the disruptive impact that they exceed even my environment approval limit. So I am looking for recommendation 2 to be considered for approval to enable me to affect those environments. That takes that £12 million secured to date, puts it above the line into services, and automatically brings that service £31 million overspending down by at least £12 million. And it's my intention to keep doing the same at each of the second and third quarter and outturn reports. And recommendation 3 is the one that summarises my officer advice, which is around retaining reserve powers to need to potentially commit up to £10 million worth of earmarked reserves. And if Cabinet is so minded to approve that, then I will also reflect that in the advice I give to Council, which I'm due to take in November, around my officer advice on the use of reserves. It would otherwise ordinarily have been a quiet year in terms of my tidying up and commenting on the reserves, but this is a year where there will be a necessary draw on reserves. What we'll actually need to draw come out turn, we'll see, because it still remains very uncertain for the second half of the year. But as I say, it's very much reserve powers that gives me maximum flexibility to assure you as a Cabinet, to assure wider members, and to assure the public that for this year there will be a balanced budget. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. And can I begin by thanking you and your officers again for the work that you've undertaken, not solely on this report, but of course the immense actions that have been deployed in supporting services who have had to vary their budgets significantly because of COVID and redesign how we deliver services, but also in support of the many hundreds of businesses across Swansea that you and your team have helped support to get through the very difficult phases in the early part of COVID. Looking at the report, I mean, I think, again, we should be thankful that the Council took the necessary actions in previous years to enable us to come into this financial year. Of course, we didn't know COVID would be upon us, but we came into this financial year in a relatively healthy position compared to most other councils in Wales and in the UK. And of course, Welsh councils remain in a relatively better position than their English counterparts in terms of the funding available to them from government. That said, even though we came in with a substantial surplus, that has had to be used to support the various additional actions that we are currently taking to support communities across Swansea. When we look at the report, as you alluded to, we do have a substantial capital programme still in delivery. Specific credit to the delivery of housing that has continued, improvements in housing across Swansea, the improvements to schools, new and better schools. And Councillor Rayner and myself have visited a number of sites recently which have either commenced building or have progressed existing schemes. Again, the biggest ever schools investment continuing despite the COVID interruptions. And of course, the dramatic change to Swansea in terms of its skyline, where we're creating not just buildings, we're creating places for people to work, businesses to occupy, jobs to be created, and for people, places for people to visit and enjoy in the coming years. And you know, that is still a dramatic story by any measure, and especially so in the current circumstances. And then finally, just to say, yes, we always start the year probably with the most pessimistic picture of how the year can turn out. But you and I are still working to make sure that those promised monies and promised support from both Welsh and UK government materialise, so that we can therefore add that assistance into the budget, so that hopefully we can come out in a more healthy position than currently laid out today. And I know directors, chief executive, and all of the senior management team are working hard to ensure that they stay within the stated limits of their budgets, difficult as it is given the variances they're having to deal with and the service changes they're having to deal with because of COVID. But again, it's an accurate report as it can be looking forward 12 months, and I thank you for that, Mr. Smith. So I'll pause there now, and I'll go to members who may wish to contribute or comment on the report. I can see Councillor Lewis has a hand up. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for the positive comments about the house building programme. It is very positive, even considering the current climate, and I think construction and development across Swansea is going to play an integral role in creating employment and supporting our local economy. There'll be more to be said about that in reports which are included on the agenda, some successes that we've had recently. But just to comment on Mr. Smith's comments about rents, he's absolutely right. We haven't seen any significant increases in arrears at this present time. However, we are keeping a very close watching brief, particularly with the ending of furlough and the concerns about rise in unemployment. And so we're watching this very carefully and watching the impact this will have on the business plan. And with that in mind, we will be bringing a report back to Cabinet on our rent strategy, which we are consulting on at present. And that very much focuses on positive rent arrears and addressing that and trying to support our council tenants as much as we can and support them early on so that we prevent any significant arrears. So I look forward to bringing that report to a future Cabinet meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lewis. Does anybody else wish to comment or say anything on this report? Okay, I can't see any other hands up, but if I'm missing anybody, please say no. No, okay. So I'm happy to move the 4 recommendations as outlined by Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith has explained the rationale for each of those recommendations. So I so move. Could I ask for a seconder, please?
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. Go to the vote then. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That looks pretty unanimous. Against? Any? Can't see any. Any abstentions? None. Okay. Thank you very much. That's carried. We'll move then to agenda item 9, which is the Housing Commissioning Review. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. Back in November 2019, which feels like a whole lifetime ago right now, Cabinet considered the findings of the Housing Commissioning Review. They approved the implementation of the key findings of the review, but I know Cabinet will remember that we agreed to go out to consultation on the district housing officers and the proposed plans. The plan at that point was to bring a report back to Cabinet on the 23rd of April, but unfortunately due to COVID we were unable to do that, and the plans were put on hold. So I bring this report to you today, but with some caveats. So the review of the service acknowledged that much of the structure has been in place for many, many years. We haven't modernised or updated or changed the housing service for a very long time. And communication from our council tenants and organisations has really dramatically changed, particularly during COVID. It's no longer seen that people need to come in and have face-to-face meetings, for example, for every issue in the district housing office. They've been telephoning, going online, paying rents, and in many circumstances, not even having to leave their home. So the proposal and the findings from the Housing Commissioning Review, just to really highlight one of the more important ones in 2.2, that a number of offices should be reduced from 9 to 6, with the proposals to close Penlan, East Side and West Cross, leaving Townhill, Morriston, Sketty Town Centre and Blaenau-Mice still remaining open, and also the plan which has been implemented very successfully to co-locate the Gwasana'n Housing Office into the nearby library. The statutory consultation exercise, we had 858 responses. This was received from a potential total of 15,236. So slightly disappointing response, but you could argue that people are happy with the service and didn't feel the need to respond. But out of those responses, we looked very carefully and there were some positives and some concerns raised. So the positives were that our council tenants understood the need to save money, to modernise the service and be more efficient and streamlined. They understood that we are heading in a direction where we want more visits in our communities and on our council estates, and more local surgeries held, as opposed to having to go to the district housing office for every issue, and more services accessible online. The main comments from those who disagreed with the closures were concerns raised, for example, about elderly, disabled people, vulnerable people, housebound people, and people with small children who don't want to travel too far from their home or may not even have transport. And also it was highlighted about people that don't have computer skills or potential access to IT. The response to that has been that we will intend to increase officer visits, face-to-face visits, offering that service on people's front doorstep. So we are taking the service to them. We're going to increase the visibility of our housing officers within the communities, and also make sure that they link positively with local police and with our LACs in the area as well. And in addition, we'll be setting up advice surgeries within communities following ward member consultation. And I think that's a very important point, that we are essentially bringing the service to our tenants. Item 3 highlights the impact of the COVID response on the housing service. And as I said, we've seen a significant shift in the way that tenants access our services. We are giving, just to highlight a few things, because I know Cabinet have had the report. For example, direct access to individual officers' mobile phones and email addresses, as opposed to what would happen previously, where they would have to go to the district housing office switchboard and then wait to be redirected to the right officer. This has worked really well and is far more efficient. And work has already commenced on improving our IT and communication improvements laid out in 3.6. So we're upgrading our ancient telephone systems and rolling out a new system called Jabber. We have plans to order a new online customer portal that will be linked to the council's upgraded Civica payment system, making it easier for tenants to pay their rent from their smartphone or from their home, and improving the reception areas in Sketty and Town Hill District Housing offices by painting works and relaying new flooring. In partnership with IT as well, implement these new IT infrastructure and software by April 2020. Before I summarise, I just want to really stress that we will not be closing any district housing offices until all these new modernised ways of working and the local surgeries are in place. And if that means that they are not in place and the customer portal is not in place by April, then we will wait until it is. So it's important that we make sure we've got all of this online and ready to go before we even consider closing the district housing offices. So to summarise, the recommendations are on page 127. I'm happy to take any questions, Leader, but there's been an incredible amount of work which has already gone into this commissioning review, and my thanks are due to all the officers involved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lewis. Does anybody wish to come in and comment on the report? I can't see any hands up, but if you do wish to come in, can you let me know? Just pause for a second. Okay, can I just add then, Councillor Lewis? I mean, I think that the point you made, which was one that I know residents were concerned about early days, was around the change in service and whether they would have the same accessibility that they currently enjoy. And I think, as you referenced, you know, things have changed already during COVID in terms of people using online services and other means to get support. But I think the modernisation of the service and the enhancement of the service, whereby our officers will often visit people in their homes rather than asking people who would probably not wish to travel unless they had to across the city, etc., to get services, was a much better service. And of course, the provision of online and other services direct for people to self-serve and others is again to be welcomed. So thank you for the work that you and the officers have done on this, and look forward to those changes taking place. Did you want to formally move the recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Formally move the report.
Okay, could I ask for a seconder, please?
Happily second.
Thank you very much. Okay, in terms of the vote, just to make it clearer for those who may be watching, I'm going to go to any abstentions first, please. I don't see any. Any against? I don't see any. So all those in favour? Okay, thank you very much. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move to the next item, which is the COVID-19 Phase 2 funding application, long title, but again, back to Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. This funding stream is following Phase 1, and Cabinet will know that Phase 1 money has been used to essentially house all our homeless people in Swansea, bar just a small handful of people who have resisted any offers of support. And the Phase 1 funding has been really successful, and work that has been done by our organisation and our partners and third sector partners has been absolutely outstanding. And with that in mind, Welsh Government decided to issue new guidance to local authorities and have a round of Phase 2 funding to follow on from the good work that's been carried out in Phase 1. I need to highlight to the Cabinet that the turnaround time for this grant application was incredibly tight. The deadline was really strict, and I have to give huge thanks to our officers for turning around this grant bid in the space of 20 days. And I think members will agree that actually the capital and revenue proposals are absolutely outstanding, considering they had such a short time frame to turn this around. We were very successful with our bid and absolutely delighted. The capital bid is set out in 1.3, the whole totality of the bid. So capital bid was 5,385,878. The revenue funding was 247,400, and that was intentional because we know that it's difficult to sustain ongoing revenue funding, and we knew that this revenue funding was due to end at the end of this financial year. So we intentionally weighted it to be more capital rather than revenue in terms of our grant. It's difficult to predict the numbers, but there's a really strong evidence base to suggest that pressure on our homelessness services is going to increase significantly over the coming months during this pandemic. We've got a lack of one-bedroom properties, the end of the furlough scheme, as I mentioned previously in October, increases in unemployment, predicted increases in levels of domestic abuse and family breakdown. Some of these reasons, all of these things are a perfect storm in terms of increasing our homelessness level. So it's really timely that we've had this grant funding, which should be able to give us an additional 100 units to be able to house people and to move them on into more permanent accommodation and into a home. It is incredibly challenging. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. To deliver the capital programme within this financial year is going to be a huge ask, but it is an ask that is shared between us and our partners. And I'm very personally proud that this was an extremely collaborative approach and a collaborative bid, and with strong working partnerships with our partners. And that is reflected in the bids that you can see. So the revenue bid is set out in 3.2. Just to give some assurance to Cabinet, when the money finishes at the end of this financial year, we will be reapplying for further Welsh Government funding to carry on these positions, and we will be monitoring them closely in terms of successes. If Welsh Government funding isn't available, then we will have to give careful consideration to us funding ourselves, particularly if these posts have given a lot of positivity and have worked well. The capital bids are set out in 3.3. I'm not going to go through them individually, but members will see the number of partners involved is incredibly positive. And as I say, section 5 lays out the innovative housing programme, round 4 bids. Section 5.4, the optimised retrofit programme grant bids. So there's a huge amount of positivity going on, not just with phase 2 funding, but also, as you referred to earlier, Leader, in terms of delivering our capital programme, delivering new homes, but also retrofitting our existing homes to make them highly energy efficient and help tackle fuel poverty. So 6.2 sets out this funding will be match funded in part by the HRA. The table is there for members' information, and all that remains is for me to move the report, Chair. I'm very happy to take questions, but the recommendations as seen are set out on pages 151 and 152. And just to finalise, as I said at the start, an introduction of this report, this is hugely positive. We've been very successful with this bid, and I'm absolutely delighted. And I'm really pleased to see that Welsh Government have stood by their long-standing commitment to tackle homelessness, and this has been definitely to the benefit of us in Swansea.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lewis. Is there anybody who wishes to comment on the report or ask any questions of Councillor Lewis? If not, then could I ask for somebody to second, please?
Happily second.
Okay, thank you. The recommendations as outlined by Councillor Lewis are there. So I'll go for abstentions first, please. Are there any? None. I'll go against. Any? And those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That looks unanimous. Thank you. As I said, that's carried. So as I said earlier, we'll skip item 11 and go straight to item 12, which is supporting economic recovery in Swansea. Councillor Francis Davis.
Thank you, Leader. Well, there probably won't be anything in this report that is going to be new to anybody on the Cabinet, because I think we discuss this probably every other day between us on our morning meetings. But you see the background in Chapter 1 there. It shows how the economy shrank in the first paragraph there, up to June by 20.4%. How the Bank of England recognised that there will not be expect an economic recovery until the end of 2021. Whether that's ambitious with the pandemic still going on and no signs of it easing at this moment in time. There's been record levels of financial support for businesses from UK government and Welsh government, which has obviously brought a lot of extra work for our finance department. And we heard from Ben Smith earlier, a Section 151 officer, the amount of work, and I think we should congratulate him and his department for the work that they've done during this time to help those businesses in Swansea. The amount of claimants, UK claimants, have risen. By the end of July, there was an increase of 116.8%. And when furlough stops at the end of October, I'm sure there will be sort of unprecedented levels of unemployment in the country, and that I think that there is going to be a need from government to help out again further, because there's going to be great hardship for families throughout the United Kingdom. The local response has been, as I said, on the businesses. We helped 4,000 business grants in Swansea. We put other smaller grants out of up to 2,500 for the startup businesses. There was 50 million of grant support. At the height of the pandemic, at Swansea Market, we stopped the rents for our tenants in Swansea Market for 3 months. We've also had a reduced rental. We put in a further £200,000 package to help these businesses. So we've done a great deal of work to support our Swansea Central Market. We work closely with Swansea Bid as well to attract footfall into Swansea, and Swansea was probably one of the most successful cities in Wales of attracting the footfall back so quickly. Not near the levels we want it to be, but we are doing our best, and the city centre management and Bid should be congratulated there. I was very pleased with the initiative we took out, targeted regeneration investment, to help some of the businesses be able to cater outside. We gave a grant that nobody else did in the United Kingdom of £8,000 per business on application. 250 Swansea businesses applied for that. Now, 250 businesses. If each one of those applications helps secure, and I knew one small business, it secured the 16 jobs that were there. Without this grant, being able to trade outside, they would have closed. That was 16 jobs. But if you take an average of 5 jobs per 250, that's 1,250 people who are still employed. That's a lot of families that are being supported by what is technically quite a small grant, really. But I think that was an exemplar in Wales of how Swansea dealt with this problem and helped those businesses survive that time, that getting people to be able to work outside of their own premises. I could go on. You've all seen the report. Probably the best way the recovery was the initiative made by Swansea in actually keeping the building and the construction industry going. We heard from Councillor Lewis earlier on about housing, unprecedented levels of investment in our council housing. That has kept a lot of people working, you know, plasterers, bricklayers, electricians, you name it, all involved in investment in our housing revenue stock. We heard as well from Councillor Rayner about the amount of schools that are being built in Swansea, the record number of investment in schools. Our phase 1 of the arena and the phase 2 that will come from that. It shows that as a council, yes, we are spending money, but that will contribute to protecting the jobs and seeing that Swansea, after COVID, will be in a position to face the future much stronger than most other authorities in the United Kingdom. And I personally would like to thank the leader here for his vision and leadership during this time of making sure that we are a progressive city and with ambition of investing in our city. It is so easy in times of this pandemic to turn around and stop all spending. We have not done that. We have kept people working, we kept people employed, and I think that is a beacon to the future. As how we come out of this pandemic, people can see that things are happening, show Swansea's open for business, and will attract further investment in Swansea. And that is the biggest contribution we as a cabinet can make to the people of Swansea. I move the report. You're on mute, leader.
My apologies. Thank you, Councillor Francis Davis. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Francis Davis? Okay, if there are none, could I ask for a seconder, please?
Happy to
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now go to the vote. So I'll take abstentions first, please. Any? I don't see any. Any against? Again, I don't see any. And all those in favour, please show. Okay, thank you very much. That looks unanimous. Okay, there are, unfortunately, myself and the Chief Executive now have to leave for a meeting with the First Minister. So can I ask Councillor Hopkins, please, to assume the chair on this occasion and to deal with the remaining reports. And as we agreed earlier, item 11 will be the last report we take. So the next item will then be item 13, Financial Rule 7. And can I just remind Councillor Hopkins to include the necessary amendment to item 15 when we reach it, as I agreed with Councillor Holly earlier.
No problem, leader. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Yes. Okay, could I ask Councillor Mark Thomas, I believe, to take us through item 13?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to do so. In January of this year, January 2020, we were asked by Welsh Government, all councils were asked by Welsh Government, to specifically put in funding bids to support the reduction in road casualties in council areas. So the three highest incident areas we had in City Council was on the A420 through Gosine, from Pentryged down through Gosine and into Lucca, the area around High Street and Castle Street, and then parts of St Helens Road. Pleased to say that we were successful in successfully winning all of those funding bids to a not insignificant funding capital bid of £879,000. So not that far off £1 million again of investment from Welsh Government. The report there highlights the areas and the emphasis that we are putting on road safety infrastructure improvements, which is raised plateaus, build outs, changes at Pelican controlled crossings and junctions, and primarily making most of those areas 20-mile-per-hour zones. In particular, around the St Helens and the High Street, Castle Street area, those link in nicely with the 20-mile-per-hour restriction we currently have on the Kingsway. So it's going to expand that out as well, okay? The other thing we've been able to do is use this as an opportunity to build into it improved cycle and pedestrian routes as well. So not only are we going to improve the on-road safety aspects of this, it's an opportunity to, again, increase our cycling and pedestrian aspects for the active travel element. So I've got nothing more to add to that. I mean, other than just note the fact again that this is for this year's spending. So we're on less than 6 months already to start work on these schemes. So pending, hopefully, support and approval from Cabinet today, we can get on and start this work in earnest. I'm happy to, sorry, Chair, I'm happy to move the report, but obviously happy to take any questions as well from colleagues.
I've got one hand up, Councillor Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Not a lot to add. I'll echo Councillor's comments, Councillor Thomas's comments. I try my best not to wear my ward member hat in this setting, but it's kind of difficult here because these are two major schemes that are benefiting the community I represent. They're all extremely welcome improvements, and I just want to thank Councillor Thomas alongside my ward colleagues for their work to date on this. If you could pass my thanks on and praise the highway safety team, who, despite the current circumstances, have been absolutely outstanding throughout. They engaged with ward members, they listened to comments, took everything on board, and happy to support the report. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Councillor
Stephen. Yeah,
thank you. Councillor Jen Rayner.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thanks to Councillor Thomas and his team. This is really good news for the new Gorsinan School, Castle Locher, Penarail Primary School, and also Penarail Comp. That area has made huge progress in terms of encouraging walking and cycling. So I think this will be a great help on the side roads, which have been used by all these pupils. Really like it, would love to see it extended to more and more areas. Thank you very much, Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Councillor Rayner. It's been moved. Have we got a second now?
Second.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to abstentions first. Any against? All in favour? Looks unanimous. Okay, thanks, Councillor Thomas. On to item 14. Yet again, road safety grant this year in the communities. Have you got anything to add, Councillor Thomas?
No, just again, it is, I mean, Councillor Rayner just touched on this one, actually. Yeah, this is, as well as particularly in relevance to the last report, which mentioned from the improvements on the main thoroughfare over the A420 from Pentygate down to Locher. We've also secured £508,000, £500,000, to enhance and improve, specifically targeted at areas around the schools and widening out the 20-mile-per-hour zones, which were primarily, we as an authority have actively installed 20-mile-per-hour zones around schools. We've had a big programme for many years to do that. This is now taking that 20-mile-per-hour zone out into the wider residential neighbourhoods. Again, it is an opportunity, and we've grasped that opportunity to expand and enhance our cycle and pedestrian routes as well. And I know in reference to the comments Councillor Stevens made earlier, yes, our officers have busily been involved with ward members because it needs that as well. There's no substitute for local knowledge, and I've always encouraged officers, particularly when they're doing schemes like this, because you want to bring on board the local residents and do something that appeals to the wider, because sometimes when you introduce measures, they aren't always wholeheartedly welcomed by everybody in the community, because you can disaffect some people by introducing speed humps on plateaus and speed limits and parking restrictions, etc. So it is trying to, get a win-win situation here where we protect our children primarily around schools and that, and the safety of children and parents visiting school, but also make it a welcome package, by the community as well. So I certainly hope that this has wider benefits rather than just directly affecting the schools. and that'll be embraced by everybody in the Gosainon area, particularly on this one. But as I said, another significant award from Welsh Government of just over £500,000. I'll move the report, Chair, and again, I'm happy to take any questions on it.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Andrew Stevens, is that a legacy and or is it? Yeah. Okay.
No. Just to save as my last comments, actually, if you could pass on my thanks, and I just wanted to reinforce what Councillor Rayner touched upon, is a very welcome part of this scheme is the inclusion of the pedestrian crossing from Penarreol Comprehensive to the fantastic new BMX and skating facilities we have at Park Mail in Mynach, which will now give safer access for both Penarreol primaries and secondaries to use these excellent facilities. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved. We got a seconder?
A second.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. Okay, any abstentions? Anybody against? All in favour? Okay, thank you. That's certainly carried. We go on to item 15, and as I said, there is an amendment to this report. We've agreed that we would include the amendments as per Councillor Chris Hawley's request earlier on. So who's going to take us through this? I think this is a report from the leader. So in his absence.
Do you want me to take it, Councillor Hopkins, in terms of...
Councillor, yes, please.
Okay, so managing the present and shaping the future from recovery to transformation. So this report is set out in 3 phases. The first phase is remobilise. This is really focusing on the last sort of 6 months really since COVID hit, and seeing what we've undertaken in terms of the initial pandemic, the steps that we've gone through, how we've helped communities recover and progress. The next part of this is refocus, and during that next 18 months period, looking really at in terms of how we'll deliver the corporate objectives and respond to the priorities that are coming, looking at the ongoing sort of economic recovery and the health recovery and the community recovery that is required, and to make sure that the council still delivers on its wider objectives. The third phase of this is then reshape, a framework looking beyond the next 18 months to 2 years, and it is nothing more than a framework. So it is looking at how the council will transform and evolve to meet the future corporate priorities, and that's set on from page 20. So as set out in the report, these are predominantly in phases 2 and 3, a framework for the future direction, making sure that we can meet the needs of the community moving forward.
Thanks, Adam. Councillor Andrew Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a point, actually, on page 202, agriculture and farming, really. I just want to put on record my thanks to our local farms and producers who stepped up when the supermarkets could not cope with demand during the pandemic. In fact, they adapted their businesses, switched to a delivery only, and worked long hours, even more than what the job already demands, to ensure that those who had to rely on deliveries were not left without. In our area, we had a lot of help at the food hub from our local businesses, regular deliveries on time without fail, from Gower Fields to the Gosainon food hub within hours. High street grocers, butchers, market trades have been suffering with a shrinking audience for years. So hopefully there's been a mindset change, and public opinion will shift to support local where they can. Shortening supply chains will not only benefit our local economy, but our environment too. This is going to be even more crucial going forward, considering that UK government just betrayed our food and farming industry by voting down Amendment 16 to the Agricultural Bill. That would have protected not just local producers' livelihoods from low welfare and poor environmental imports, but more important, the health of our county. Thank you. Happy to support the report.
You're on mute, David.
You're on mute.
Sorry, it's better. Councillor Jen Rayner.
Thank you. This is an interesting report, but as Councillor Robert Francis Davis said earlier in the meeting during the excellent paper on economic recovery, that from March, during the early stages of the pandemic, Swansea kept going. This is not a case of shutting down and then trying to restart. A heck of a lot was kept going across all areas of the council to support our residents and continue our business. We are still in the pandemic, so I see this very much as a working document that we will look to, but we will amend as more and more information comes to light and we adjust to how we will manage our services going forward. So welcome it, but I think we have to treat it as work in progress, and we will follow and we will all contribute to the development. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rayner. Councillor Robert Francis Davis.
Yes, so similar thing to Councillor Rayner here. You know, when I look at the strategy of 3 phases of, remobilise, refocus and reshape, I think we focused all along, but to remobilise, it's not going to be easy, because all the indications, watching the gloomy news every morning, that it looks as if we're heading for another lockdown or whatever line they can now calling it. But this is going to be perhaps a lockdown without the help of a furlough from central government, which is going to bring very great hardship on the people of the United Kingdom. What I do worry about is the longer we're in this pandemic, is the expectations of the public who think when the lockdown was eased, as if it was all over, the way people went out and expected that all the services were going to be back to normal, whatever the normal is, and they fall from it, and people can be demands can be a bit too high sometimes. We're all here today having a cabinet meeting from all different places, whereas people still expect the refuse collection to be there, the grass to be cut, the cycle paths to be cleared, as if we're not in the middle of a pandemic. We are still very much in a pandemic. So I think that the public do need to realize the seriousness of it and moderate their behavior. If we are going to work on this program of recovery, the public need to work with us as well. It's a document there which has got to be reassessed all the time. It is a live document. It's not going to be the panacea to treat everything, but I just hope that the public will realize that this pandemic is here and it's not going away yet. And until we get a vaccine that's going to be efficient, we could be in this for a very long time. I did say earlier that the amount of money that we've been spending on housing and schools and our city is holding us in good esteem for the future. But we have still got lots of problems around us.
Thanks, Councillor Rob Francis Davis. I think it has been highlighted. This certainly is a working document, a work in progress, and I'm sure we will value the opportunity for, as the amendment will say, with scrutiny as well. Because obviously the more we can include and work with others, the better here, because that's exactly what we have done, is work with the private sector and public sector. It's been exceptional, some of the work coming from our communities. Councillor Rayner, is that an old hand or? She frozen out. I think we have some technical problems here as well from reading some of the chat. So I can assure you, I can see majority of people. My screen's quite full. So It's been moved. Have we got a seconder?
Happy to second.
Okay. Any abstentions? Anybody against? And all for? Anybody all for? Okay, that's certainly unanimous. Okay, on to item 16. Digital infrastructure business case.
Thank you, Chair. If I can make a start on this, appreciating the leader's absence, but we've also got Sarah Lackenby on the line, and I'm sure Councillor Stevens will want to contribute as well. I'll be as brief as I can because I appreciate we're having some technical difficulties, but the headline of this is a £55 investment in digital infrastructure and connectivity across the city region, £25 million of funding from the city deal and a further 30 million leveraged from the public and private sector. There are 3 primary work streams: connected places. This is regional support that will increase the availability of fibre to the premises in key urban areas, mainly targeting at existing industrial areas and economic growth zones to provide world-class connectivity. Rural connectivity intervention where there is a shortfall in existing or planned investment to ensure that as many as possible rural premises in the region have access to a minimum broadband service considered via a gigabyte capable infrastructure. And next generation wireless, the provision of next generation wireless connectivity in the form of 5G and Internet of Things networks. The use cases and business models for these technologies is still to emerge, but we're supporting the early adoption and stimulating innovation within the regions for local SMEs and ensuring that Swansea Bay City region stays at the forefront of deploying this technology. Why are we doing it? This is going to result in minimum of 318 million GVA uplift over the next 15 years. Connectivity is clearly fundamental and essential for any businesses in the modern day. And this digital infrastructure will also help underpin our social and economic prosperity for the next 20 to 30 years at least. I'm going to pause there, Chair. I'm happy to move the report, and I'm sure there are other things that I've missed that I'm sure Sarah and Andrew will be able to pick up.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Lewis. Much appreciated. Sarah, did you want to add anything to the report?
Thank you, Chair. No, just to add, the support from City Deal for Swansea has been immense. We've been working very closely together. They are actually also looking at putting in additional resource into Swansea to help us deliver this. And we've got good governance around this. So we've not only is governance, but we also have the digital board as well. And already we've been able to put other bids in on the back of this. So it's been it's now really starting to move forward in a very positive way. It's also going to give us that ultra connected cities opportunities that we talk about for Swansea. So being able to have that sort of smart city status of the future, which is really part of our long-term future strategy. So this is really the first step on that really good journey. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Any questions? No. Councillor Andrew Stevens?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I welcome the report and echo all the comments made so far. Those that know me, they will know my passion and enthusiasm for all things tech, while fibre and duct don't make for the most attractive reading for some. For me, it does. Full fibre and 5G is needed to enable a super connected Swansea, and this infrastructure will underpin everything. Digital infrastructure has emerged as one of the newest sectors, and the digital revolution has given rise to the ever-growing demand for data connectivity. In fact, the smart city will only ever be as good as its connectivity, and this project gives us the foundation, and a strong foundation. It's that bottom layer that everything else can sit on. It would certainly complement the digital strategy that covers everything from AI, data centres, air quality monitoring, traffic management systems, other industry-specific digital initiatives. In fact, a key driver in economic growth is fast, reliable connectivity. So it's great to see a plan come forward to improve our digital infrastructure from the ground up, whether that's in physical fibre, dark fibre, Wi-Fi 6 or 5G, supporting all of our areas from urban to rural. We can have the best Wi-Fi or telecom access points, but without the framework behind it, it would be in vain. It's welcoming to see rural areas mentioned in the report. In fact, I believe technology will have a significant impact on how we farm in the future, and agri-tech has a massive role to play. I'm not talking about industrializing farming, and I am certainly not talking about lab-grown meat or whatever the current fad is. I'm talking quality of life changes from livestock monitoring, greenhouse automation, data collection, minimizing carbon impact and improving biodiversity. Access to the Internet of Things networks and better connectivity can revolutionize the sector, and it can help farmers improve their businesses and automate the more mundane processes to free up more time for farmers to do what they do best, and that's look after the land and their animals. Whether we like it or not, COVID-19 has cemented our dependence on fast, reliable internet access. And if there's ever been a more reason to invest in digital, that time is now. I think we're in the middle of a digital revolution that's being driven by the unprecedented increase in electronic data. The evidence is everywhere around us. The information today and technology is transforming how we live, work, communicate, and access information. And I think we have a big part to play in raising awareness and encouraging the adoption of digital technologies. I may have gone a little bit off topic on it, but so happy to second the report.
Thanks, Councillor. It's been moved. I've got a seconder. Yeah, thanks, Henry. Okay, any abstentions? Anybody against? All for? Okay, thank you very much. It's certainly carried. Looks unanimous. We then go up back to item 11, which is our last item on the agenda, local authority governor appointments. In the absence of...
I will be leaving. Goodbye.
Thanks. In the absence of Jen Rayner, then I'll move the report.
Happy to second, Chair.
Okay. Any abstentions? Anybody against? All for? Okay, that's carried. Could I thank you for your attention? It is much appreciated. And look forward to seeing you shortly. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheerio.
Hugh, from your point of view, obviously we've had some